All right, well, welcome everyone. This is a live video broadcast as part of our Living in Oneness Summit. It's great to be with you. I'm Steve Farrell, the Worldwide Executive Director for Humanities team. We have a really exciting program in store for you today. We're going to be covering a lot of valuable ground. Marilyn Tam was going to be our special guest during today's program, but she's in one of these areas in Southern California, in the Santa Barbara area, where there were fires and now there are mudslides. So she's been evacuated to a fire station. So let's all send lots of prayers and best intentions to Marilyn. We do have Kristin Vesa and Stephen Dynako with the Conscious Business Enterprise here with me. This is our good fortune because Conscious Business Enterprise is focused on moving the global economy and commerce and business from enterprise with an E, where of course the focus is on revenue and profit growth, to enterprise with an I, for inner guided, that creates nurturing solutions for communities in the earth. This is a huge shift that we're going to spend some time talking about here. I think you'll be astounded, really, at the vision of what's being carried out. So be sure to stay with us for the full hour. A quick introduction to Humanities team as we get started. In Humanities team, we see there is only one presence, the divine, and see that we're all emanations of the divine. It's true for each of us in all of life. Doesn't matter how far our lives may be from reflecting this truth, it's still true. Our invitation is to live in communion with the divine and be an authentic expression, each in our own way, of the presence, peace, and power that are our true essence. We don't need to be perfect or even excellent. We're invited to simply receive God's love and be an expression of that, each in our own way, to the best of our ability. We can be intentional about this, so we live this way each day. And of course, when we do this together, we create the world that we know is ours. Okay, concerning today's program with Kristin and Stephen, I invite you to share your questions by placing them in the chat window. The sooner the better. This way we can get to them during the 60-minute program. You might go ahead and begin sharing any questions or comments that you have now. In the last 10 minutes or so of the program, we generally are not able to get to comments and questions that come in. I'd like to extend an invitation to those of you who receive value from our weekly programming. Our weekly programs cost us about $1,000 to produce each week. And of course, we're providing these programs free to the public and the archived link that we send out if people miss the live program. If you find value in our programming and free recorded links, we invite you to go to the humanitiesteam.org website. At the top of the website, you'll see a yellow donate button. You can contribute there, or we're making it easy here. You can see here in the window. We're also placing a link so that you can donate right from the program here, our webinar today. So, and thank you in advance for your generosity and your generosity over the years. Okay, let's bring in our special guests. I'm going to read a brief introduction for our special guests now. Kristin Vesa is the Senior Director of Conscious Business Innerprise. She has been a leader in conscious business, spending the last 15 years consulting celebrities for the secret and executives of personal development, health, and wellness companies. Her corporate background includes process improvement and implementation of technologies for Apple, Ernst & Young, and Volvo. Kristin grew up on a farm and now, more than ever, realizes the importance of our interconnectedness with nature. And welcome to the program, Kristin.
Thank you, Steve. It's great to be here with you. I look forward to sharing some fun with you today in the audience. Thank you.
Awesome. We'll have a lot of fun for sure. And next up, Stephen Dynako. I want to make sure I'm pronouncing Stephen's last name correctly. Dynako. Okay, thank you, Stephen. He's the program director for Conscious Business Enterprise, and Stephen brings the world gifts of communication and leadership. Over his career, he's used these gifts in various roles in the financial, technology, and media industries. In service, he has applied gifts of communication and leadership in the realms of counseling and the ministry. Stephen is the author of The Self-Aware Lover, and his living teachings support my modern life. Stephen worked in both corporate and entrepreneurial environments for over 30 years. This includes leadership positions at large companies such as IBM, JP Morgan Chase, and BMO Harris Bank. Stephen is currently pursuing what he calls courage building practice to help burnt out professionals like he once was to find new meaning, life, and purpose in their work, above all to help humanity through evolutionary self-awareness. And welcome to the program, Stephen. It's great to have you with us.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I'm really grateful to be here, and I'm looking forward to the really dynamic conversation I expect we'll be having. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, we're going to jump right in. Gosh, this hour is going to go fast. So many things that we can get to here. And Kristin, if I can direct the first question to you, I mentioned in your introduction, a lucrative career. You've got an MBA. You've worked in Silicon Valley. So how and why did you decide to leave lucrative careers for the work that you're doing now?
Thank you, Steve. The work that I'm doing now really resonates with me because when I left the corporate, it was because I felt like I was just putting a lot of black ink on white paper, and the type of work wasn't fulfilling anymore. I wasn't creative enough. It wasn't feeling like it was actually serving humanity even. So the Conscious Business Enterprise is really a chance to bring in conscious business consulting, which as stated in the bio, for the past 15 years, I had taken time out of corporate and worked with more small businesses, and recognizing that every small business I was working with was really a conscious business, whether it was a spiritual business or a raw food or any personal development. They were all really conscious, doing good for the planet. So what resonated for Conscious Business Enterprise for me was the certification program. I was ready to step back into corporate, but bringing consciousness into corporations. And I felt that the certification program offered by the Conscious Business Enterprise would be a great way to step into that. So little did I know at the time that this opportunity would be unfolding for me. And it's just a matter of saying yes. And now what I love about this opportunity is not only am I stepping into one corporation, but I'm helping with everyone who comes through the program. It's like multiplying the ability to work with more and more companies through this program by helping others work in more companies. So I'm just really grateful for this opportunity and glad to be in service. Thank you.
Fantastic, Kristin. Yeah, boy, and that lays the groundwork for some deeper discussion too when we get to, you talked about certification, what that is and how that works. So we'll come back to that. But wow, that's awesome. And Stephen, this is really important. Maybe we can go to you also. In your introduction, I mentioned that you were you're helping burnout professionals is part of how you see the gift of your work. But you did hold big jobs, IBM and banking career, etc. Why did you decide to walk away from that?
Yeah, for me, somewhat similar to Kristin. I had this really very extensive professional experience, as you noted in my bio, and then increasingly, as I was getting more involved in doing helping work, you'd mentioned the ministry, and I was doing lay ministry as a chaplain for several years, and sort of had this one foot in the corporate world and the other foot in the helping world. And as I was doing more helping work, the work in the corporate world didn't feel so resonant anymore. And even though I felt I was bringing consciousness to my work in the corporate realm, I found it very challenging to really be in community with others in that business. So I basically jumped over to the helping realm, went to school to get my graduate degree in pastoral counseling, and then eventually came to the epiphany that, well, really, it's not about completely leaving the business world, but it's about taking my business experience and merging it with my desire to help people. And around the time I was mulling all of this over, I came across the Conscious Business Enterprise and the certification program. So, just the divine will line these things up and put the breadcrumbs out, and I just followed them. So for me, that the program has been really instrumental in stepping up my game in doing conscious business. And I just feel that I'm contributing in a much more profound way with this consciousness of helping versus when I was just in the corporate world for the sake of profit and performance, and really, like you had mentioned, helping people who are feeling burnt out because there's no meaning in the work anymore. So that's like a really short version of my story.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, and it is true. I love that, like putting bird crumbs out, that it is conscious evolution is what life really is. It just happens naturally, doesn't it? Probably true for listeners here on the program as well. Let's go a little deeper. So, and the whole passion here is conscious business, and we probably all have concepts of what this is, but let's really go down and talk about what conscious business is. What's the problem that conscious business is trying to solve? And Kristin, can I direct that question to you?
Sure, I'll give a first pass at least at that. For me, I think consciousness is something that is, and it's really conscious awareness that is critical. So what we're talking about is being consciously aware in your business activity from day to day. Like I said, I felt like as I became aware that what I was doing was just putting a lot of black ink on white paper, and it didn't feel like there was any purpose or meaning in it anymore. Or that I was working for, had opportunities coming in all over the place for higher salaries. But when I looked at what was the product or service this corporation was actually putting in the world, was it actually helping and healing the world, or was it harming the world? So to me, the consciousness is about awareness to doing good in business, aligning what is in my heart, your heart, everyone's heart, to really heal this planet and be, like I said, too, growing up on a farm. It's not until recently where for many years I bucked the idea of the farm and thought, oh, I don't want to just be stuck on the farm. But now I recognize how important nature and our planet is to our continuing the human species, and that business itself can be a great contributor to healing the planet and being prosperous at the same time. So to me, it's that combining all of that is what conscious business is really serving.
Yeah, amen to that. We're gonna, go deeper here too. In fact, Stephen, if I can come over to you, why is conscious business important? But also bringing in for viewers here, because we all have these incredibly busy lifestyles, and we've got these key priorities, including family and friends and things. And so, why should viewers pay attention to conscious business? Why is this something that should matter to them?
Yeah, this is, to me, this is like really essential to the quality of our lives on the planet and to the life of the planet. So to practice conscious business, for me, it's been for a long time as I was growing in my own awareness. It was about, contributing in a bigger way so that I felt fulfilled. And then because I had a management role in much of my career, it was encouraging others and helping to provide them with the environment so that they could flourish and feel fulfillment in their jobs. And therefore, it naturally followed that the quality of their lives would be better. So that only made sense to me. And then as I continued in my own self-awareness, my awareness of what business has done detrimentally to the planet just became a really big concern for me. So, I look at this as just holistic. It's all related. So, if we're practicing conscious business for our own fulfillment and health, it follows that we have an inherent interest in the health of our environment, our societies, and the planet. So, so for me, it's all top of mind. And I really, through my work, by supporting individuals in their growth and self-awareness, I'm helping to support the planet in its continued health and flourishing and thriving. So to me, it's all completely related.
Yes, it is. And I see a question from Penny in Colorado's coming. And Penny, we'll get to your question here in just a moment. But yeah, let's just, and of course, Conscious Business Enterprise is part of Humanity's team. So I can maybe come in a little bit here too. Just this whole thing, of course, Humanity's team is focused on this foundational thing of separation, where our eyes, in a sense, deceive us. And that we think, as we view things, we're separate from each other, and that source or God or the divine, it might just be up in the clouds somewhere. And yet the ancient wisdom and the timeless truth is that actually this isn't true at all. Even as we know, many scientists now have made it their life work to say, everything actually is connected, that actually we are all one. We're all the face, arms, legs, and lungs of something, which in humanities team we call the divine. But my aunt here in Boulder, who's an atheist, calls it life, and so we can call it life or the divine or whatever we want to call it, but we're actually all connected. And that's a game-changing thing, isn't it? Because if we're connected, then that has a lot of repercussion, that like responsibility being one. Like we're connected in a family to our spouse and with our kids, and so in that connection, there's a responsibility, where we take care of each other. Now we kind of move the fence posts out, don't we? Where we see our connection with each other, all of us here on the screen, but people that are watching who we can't see, and for that matter, the whole planet, all of humanity and all of life. So what, maybe, just bringing that in here, as we look at then these things that concern us, the climate change issues, the environment, the social inequality, income inequality, which is getting worse. These are all things that we all have to care about. They can't just be confined to our family. Isn't it true? And doesn't that come in here in conscious business too?
Yeah, and what you were saying with all that, Steve, what really comes to mind for me is in our interconnectedness, is that we have a responsibility to be attuned to the impact that we have. So for me, this is a great deal about what conscious business is about, is being attuned to the impact. I love that seventh generation principle of the Iroquois, right? That every decision or every action we contemplate, let's consider the impact, the ripple impact of that 7 generations out. And I feel like that's such a powerful principle. And if we can kind of go back to the future and bring that principle into business, and business really embrace that as standard operating procedure, if you will, we will contribute to the renewal of our environment, of our societies, and of the business world. Will be generative versus being extractive.
Yes, yeah, generative versus extractive. Thumbs up to that. Kristin, do you want to add?
Yeah, I do. Thank you. I would like to add to the thread that Stephen started with, the principle of the ripple effect. And I noticed a question from one of our callers saying, there are a lot of business out there that's doing good and would claim that at least attempting to be conscious business, yet there's also often a lot of internal dysfunction in these businesses. And what have you found to be the biggest issue? And how would you address that issue? I think this comes right back to this ripple effect. And if you think of dropping a pebble into a puddle, it's where the pebble drops, that center is where the ripple is caused. So as we, our conscious business enterprise, each one of us inside is where that ripple starts. So it's our inner desire to match up with, as Stephen said, those 7 generations. Once we connect to that 7 generation out, and then we come back, we realize it starts with our inner. So as conscious business practitioners, how might we address this issue? It really starts with ourselves, and it starts with staying true to our heart's desire and true to our conscious awareness of what we're doing in each moment to stay aligned with that desire. And as we stay aligned, we create the ripple. The ripple doesn't get created from any other ring than the center. And I think just remembering that as a kind of visual, even as you think about what conscious business is and where does it start, and that's the only place it can start. That's the only place the ripple starts, is from the center and goes out. So just like to share.
Yeah, beautiful. That's a great lead in to, we were sharing we might want to do a brief experiential exercise, and this might be a great time to do that. Would you all, Kristin and Stephen, like to lead us in an experiential exercise?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to do that. So this is a very simple exercise that we could just simply call heart breathing. And what I would invite you to do, you can do this with your eyes open or with your eyes closed. So however it feels comfortable for you. And it's simply going to invite you just to become aware of your body sitting in the chair. That's where we start. And just allow yourself to relax, eyes open or eyes closed, but certainly it's nice to be able to do this practice eyes open, because if you're in a business environment and you're getting charged up or triggered by something, it's sort of hard to just tune out all of a sudden. So if you can do this with your eyes open, it's actually a very powerful practice to do with full awareness. So just becoming aware of your body and then bringing your attention to your breathing. And just notice, the first thing you might notice if you're in a stressful situation is that you've stopped breathing, or your breathing is really shallow. And when you bring your attention to your breathing, intentionally allow it to become a little bit deeper. So that's how this starts, is awareness of your breathing. And then as you become increasingly aware of your breathing, bring your attention to the center of your chest. And conceptualize your heart as if it were a third lung. So conceptualize that the air is coming in and out of the center of your chest. And what this is doing is it's giving your brain, your prefrontal cortex, something to focus on, other than the emotion or the situation that you're in. And you're actually directing your attention within and very consciously to your heart. And then just with that breath awareness and that focus on your heart, just continue breathing and being aware until whatever emotional charge you might be feeling just eventually begins to melt away. And with that, when you get to that point, you've neutralized any afflictive emotion, and you've actually put your prefrontal cortex back online so that you can think more clearly and make better decisions and come from a place of love versus a place of fear. And that's it. That's a very simple, powerful practice.
Beautiful. Yeah, nice one for the office. Yeah, thank you, Stephen.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So let's bring in another question here. This one's from Caitlin, and she says, could you give us an example of one way in which conscious business is changing the world?
I could take that one. I have been aware of Tom's Shoes since the company had started. And the thing that drew me to it as a customer was the fact that if I buy a pair of Tom's Shoes, the company donates a pair of shoes to someone in need. And I thought, well, wow, isn't that something? I mean, it's so elegantly simple and yet so powerful, that idea. And I'm happy to even pay a little bit of a premium for that, because as somebody who has the ability to pay that full price for those shoes, I feel like I'm contributing to a conscious process of helping somebody else who is in need. So that's one really powerful, simple example of the way that I feel conscious business is changing the world.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. And I'll just come in here too. One of the outcome with this conscious business is that the solution, which is the products or services that the business is providing, are life-sustaining, life-supporting, and life-enhancing. That's really that's the outcome of conscious business. It's nurturing for the community and the planet. And there's so many examples. Actually, Tom's Shoes is wonderful, because God, how cool is that? Where we're buying a pair of shoes and then a pair of shoes goes to a person in need. But Tesla with its electric cars and now trucks and the solar tiles, and Unilever based out of Europe with its food items that are nurturing. They've dropped a lot of their old food items. They're going into things like biodegradable packaging. Like Italy even just passed a law that requires now compostable packaging in bags. So these are just a couple of examples. And then also, for like with our 401ks where we're our retirement income, increasingly now people are investing in these social index funds. And back, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it was that we were actually giving up some return by investing in social index funds as opposed to like the S&P 500. But for the last 2 years, the social index funds now are outperforming the market, which is another example of how we as conscious consumers are saying, I want products and services that nurture my community. I want my investments to nurture the world. So there actually are many examples of how conscious business is changing the world. And I'll just bring in, one of the things that we share is that an evolutionary tornado has put down, and that it's now irreversible, which is to say then unconscious companies are going to be quite challenged, we believe, because consumers are going to less and less want to buy their products and services. And the opposite is true too. There's this halo effect for like Unilever and Tesla and Tom Shoes and Patagonia and so on that are going to the front leading. So there are many examples. Conscious business isn't some new age fad thing at all. It's actually ultimate reality.
Yeah.
Barbara Marx Hubbard calls the wheel of co-creation, where we're actually in every sphere of life, everything is evolving in a conscious direction. Business too. And there are more questions here, which we'll get to. And thank you, all viewers, for coming in with questions. Thanks also, Garth, for answering. Somebody came in late wondering what happened to Marilyn Tam. We're sending her lots of prayers because she's in one of those areas that was flooded after the fires in Southern California. So she's not in her home. She's in a fire station right now. Okay, let's come into Kristin and Stephen. Something real exciting. The name was just changed. It was Conscious Business Initiative, and it's gone to a new name and a new tagline. Can we talk about that? Kristin, do you want to come in with that?
Sure. Well, I think I already tipped this off a little bit with the idea of starting with the inner, right? So inner, INNER, prize, as the place to start with conscious business is inside yourself. And back to what I said previously about the ripple effect, that's where the ripple starts. And I think to your points, Steve and Stephen, about examples of how conscious business, examples of conscious business in the world already, the alignment with your inner and your outer. So I recognize in myself, Steve, when you talk about tornado, I think, no, it feels more like Johnny Appleseed, like we're planting seeds and something new is growing. It's a little softer and more gentle. And I think that's the real feeling tone for inner. It's, we're moving, we've already moved out of industrial to informational, but what is this new era we're moving into? It feels more like an intuitive inner transformation that is being called for throughout all of society, including business. So from my perspective, I feel that inner prize really represents that idea and that concept and brings the initiative from launching to really being grounded in the inner and really supporting itself for taking its next step in playing a bigger role for conscious business.
Yeah, so we're going from enterprise with an E, which is how we tend to spell enterprise with a more revenue and profit growth focus, to enterprise with an I. And how cool is that, creating enterprises? So this, and Stephen, if we could just kind of go down into this a little deeper, these enterprises, the word presence is used quite a lot. And then there's also a new tagline here. Do you want to talk a little bit about presence and the new tagline?
Yeah, so this idea of presence is, to me, very powerful in conscious business, and we presence. I think the way that I look at presence, there's a couple different ways you can, different perspectives. So one, we talk of presence with a capital P is just the presence of spirit, by whatever name you call it or choose to call it or not. And it's, that's something that really deep within that calls us to something greater, calls us to something purposeful. And I love the way in Conscious Business Enterprise that we use that idea of presence as really foundational. We recognize that people are being called from within to do higher purposeful work. And then presence more from a practical level is like just showing up. So through the calling you receive, you're showing up by way of your presence, and you're being present to the business and to the people who are supporting the business and working in the business. And then our tagline, the tagline for Conscious Business Enterprise is a new paradigm of prosperity. And that is about recognizing prosperity includes and is more than making money. So, it's not just about, more stock options or bigger yields or more profit, but prosperity really is a holistic idea. And the new prosperity is this holistic idea that we are fulfilled not only financially, but personally, purposefully, socially, environmentally, and so forth. And what a powerful thing to feel prosperous in doing your business, with all the joy and ecstasy that can come with that. I know people who just will claim that they can throw money at something to solve a problem or to make people happy. And my experience of that is that doesn't really work. That true prosperity is much more rich and deep and holistic than just finance.
Yes, it is. And this is really important. So let's just engage this some more, Kristin, and this presence also, over to you as we really bring in the important, because we call it our fourth P, right, in humanities team, because there's people, planet, profit, which people are familiar with, which is what like B Lab and B Corp, have made people aware of. The business can go beyond profit to people, planet, profit. But so why presence? And Kristin, if you were going to add to that.
Yeah, I think that Stephen did a really nice job in his explanation or his feeling into that. And again, if you take the 4 Ps and why is there a fourth, again, going from the industrial kind of how business is structured, a very external industrial model versus connecting back with really nature and how creating out of nothing. It's from the presence that and everything's possible. It's thinking into, feeling into, leaning into the presence of what is the real desire that wants to be fulfilled versus the mechanical, well, the only thing that matters is bottom line, let's just make money any which way we can. I mean, it's really opening up to something beyond that. And I really commend the conscious capitalism and B Corps. I think that we have to evolve from one stage to the next. And it's really, we are just at that point to evolve to the next stage. And I see all of the organizations moving to that. And we're just leading the way of going, really kind of stepping up from bringing those first 3 Ps in, the profit with the people, with the planet. And, I recognize that people have been important all the way through too. Part of my background is working with the human factors in the corporate work that I did in manufacturing, always on the human factor. How are the human beings being treated in the manufacturing area? So for me, this is a natural next step in the evolution of this, and more awareness that it is about the people. It is about the healing and the wellness and everyone feeling good, and not harming one or the other to compete in that kind of way that it's all just a competition. It's not really a competition. It's a co-creation. It's a collaboration. And the presence really brings that collaboration piece in.
Yes, it does. Thank you, Kristin and Stephen. And it also it ties back to this whole fundamental thing that humanities team was launched around in 2003, which was this, which I had in the introduction, that everything's an emanation of one thing, of the divine. That so presence, where we really see that as we look at each other and we look at nature and life out into the cosmos, that actually everything is a part of the divine. It's the emanating force that is present in everything, and that's sacred, of course, and that is in our interior. So this inner word is so beautiful because it's directing us all back to where we can find truth and wisdom and love, because the divine is within and is in all things, which is presence. So the presence is our present. Yeah, and it's challenging then, isn't it? If we leave presence out and we just keep it on the level, more secular level of people, planet, profit, that can introduce challenges, can it?
Yeah, and at the same time, I think that there is, as a human being, we innately understand presence when we have an exercise like Stephen stepped us through, when we can feel our heart beating and our breath breathing, and we recognize that even as humans, we actually exist in this presence. We are not separate from this presence. And to me, there is a physical reality to that I know there are often questions around, oh, this seems like such a spiritual term. How do we bring it back to, back to some other level? And I'm not saying there's a good and bad. It's not about that. It's about it being all one, and that we as human beings walking on this planet, we are walking in the presence all the time. Our hearts are beating, our breath is flowing without us doing anything. We are present in that presence. So there's something about that grounded understanding. And again, I thank Stephen for the exercise he brought in to really feel into that awareness of just how present each one of us is in every moment.
Yeah, and I would add to that we can consider presence as we could call it purpose. I feel we can call it meaning. It doesn't have to have a spiritual connotation. So for people or for companies that would be adverse to spiritual language, you could say you ask somebody, well, what does the work have meaning for you? And I believe most people will get that. And there will be people who readily admit that, well, I'm in business to make money and that's it. Okay, we can honor that. And then for the other person, we could say, well, I need to find meaning in my work. And to me, the connection with that meaning inherently is presence, whether you call it by that or not. So if we feel triggered by the spiritual terminology, I think just the idea of doing meaningful work and wanting to contribute in a positive way, presence is baked into that automatically. Yeah, we don't need to use the word all the time.
Yeah, you could even, it's your soul's calling, when most people relate to their soul. But so here's a question that is actually related to this. It's Penny here in Colorado. She says, would you characterize presence as a spiritual concept? And if so, how do you bring it into organizations who are more secular and aren't interested in bringing spirituality into their business?
So my reaction to that question is you just do it in your own way. You don't have to talk about it or evangelize it. That just by showing up and knowing you're showing up and choosing from within the enterprise, right? Choosing from within to express presence, people will attune to how you're tuned in. That heart breathing exercise I took us through is actually also another way to attune with others at a positive energetic level, electromagnetically. So just by showing up, you don't ever have to explicitly talk about presence as being spirit. You just show up in your own consciousness, and then other people will respond.
Yes, gosh, this reminds me too of this. We've talked about these articles that were in the New York Times that talked about these entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley who had achieved incredible financial wealth and success. but who were in crisis because they weren't finding their soul's calling in their work or in their life. So, you know, maybe things like that come in here as well, huh?
Yeah, and what I would say, there's a listening. If you think of the other definition of presence that Stephen brought in earlier, that be present, that is presence. So coming in and having full awareness and being in listening mode, accepting mode, really being there to identify what is actually happening, what is actually wanting to come forward in this business at this time, that is beyond just more money on the bottom line. Like, what truly is the gift that this business has to give to the planet and the people? And that, I think, none of the spiritual words need to be articulated. You articulate the words that resonate with that environment, with that group of people, and help being present to something that's underlying what's been going on there and bringing that more to the surface. So presencing what's underneath the initiative, the business, the organization, the product, the service, the humans in the room. I think that's part of bringing presence into business and doing conscious business.
Yes, it is. And let me say, you know, this is, I think, very individual. We all have our own way of walking this in, but one of the things that's been true of the CBI and humanities team is we haven't been afraid of just our own authenticity of what's been true for us in our lives. And so meaning and purpose and presence and spiritual dimensions, you know, have been true. And so we're not afraid of like a company saying, well, meaning and purpose and presence don't have any place here. You know, that would we wouldn't be afraid of that. Because there are way too many, you know, and which is to say that we maybe aren't going to be, that every company might not find value in our work, but I think there are increasing numbers that do, because there are increasing numbers of articles that you read where people are burnt out, where people feel like they're not finding their soul's calling, where people are feeling in crisis, even though they have plenty of bank account. So, and you know, just having your authentic voice and sharing what's true will resonate for that the growing list of small, medium, and large-sized businesses that do resonate with this work and that believe it's the future. Well, let me bring in, related to this, Olay has a question here. She says, I am frustrated by our inability to influence big stock exchange companies, even though we, the citizens, actually are the majority owners through our pension and personal savings. Any thoughts on this, Kristin and Stephen?
Yeah, I would say that just continue to practice the consciousness that those changes and your impact on them will become more powerful as time goes on. Because if we feel helpless and we continue to feel helpless, that takes us sort of down this negative spiral. And you know, there's this idea of don't judge by the appearances. There have been insurmountable things that have appeared all throughout history, and they've been overcome. So I would say, you know, this is one way to take on the challenge posed by this question, is just to stay conscious and to stay involved and to follow your heart, and to be as activist and as participatory in that process of influencing companies, even though you might feel like, you know, you're a tiny voice, but the truth is that every voice has resonance and power. So I just encourage you to remain encouraged.
Yeah, and I think what's coming through on this for me is the Pareto's 80-20 effect. I noticed in the question you mentioned personal savings versus pension funds. So perhaps the pension fund isn't something you feel you have personal control over changing. Personal savings, though, maybe even if you take all of that savings and 20% of that, really find a place where you're investing your money in something that you feel completely aligned with, and starting there. You know, sometimes the 20%, typically the 20% will help ripple out to the 100%, the 20% activity, and the rest will follow. So being conscious of where we invest our money, where we save our money, how we spend our money, I think this is important. I think this is part of conscious business. And that is the thing that makes it different than a spiritual, voluntary, practice. This is truly, in at least the society we're living today, as long as it's capitalist and it is money that we're exchanging, that energetic of where you're placing your money, there's your energy behind that that's saying yes. So if you think of every dollar you spend as saying yes to where you're spending it, spend it where you consciously want to spend it, on the investments, the businesses, the goods and services that you're aligned with. I think that that's something each one of us does have control of, and that's the first step in conscious business.
And there's a Facebook group that's growing here for conscious business, isn't there? You want to talk about that and how people can join?
Sure, yeah. So if you are on Facebook, you can look up Conscious Business Innerprise, INNERPRISE, and that's our Facebook group. We would love to have you join. So just put in a request to join, and we typically get people added to that right away. And in that group, you can initiate discussions. You can share items of interest that are happening in conscious business. Just is something that we'd love to have you participate in. The group's been growing throughout the year, last year. So yeah, please look it up, join, and we'd love to see you and hear you there.
Right, and boy, the timing here is auspicious, because just this week there's a campaign being launched here by Conscious Business Innerprise. And do you want to talk a little bit about the campaign, Kristin?
Yes, absolutely. So Conscious Business Innerprise is launching a brand new 6-week program, and that's really targeted for those executives or anyone who's interested in conscious business and feels like they'd like to understand more what we're talking about here. So it's a shorter program. We've had the training and certification program now going for 2 years. We can talk about that next, but the new program is to really help you get a taste a little bit more of what we are bringing through here, how we can answer some of these questions more fully about using business language and bringing these concepts into play, bringing presence into business. So we look forward to sharing more of that, and I'll let Stephen say a couple words too, and maybe Steve, back to you on some of the details with that program.
Yeah, the program is got some I'd say very deep wisdom in it, and we are very intentionally bringing in folks that we've had teach in the program previously, and just plucking pearls of wisdom from their previous teachings. And we're really, our intention is to make this very rich and very deep and very thought-provoking. So it's experiential. We'll be teaching practices for conscious business, and we'll be supporting you as you practice those practices. So the course is evolved from what it had been previously to something much more powerful, we believe, this year.
Yeah, it's exciting. So let's talk a little bit more about it, the campaign and the courses that are coming. And so as has been mentioned, there's we're referring to it sometimes as a manifesto. There's an email that went out from Humanities team and CBI this week that talks about this manifesto that you can download, that's for free, or a discourse, we're also calling it. That's really pretty cool. It's free. And then there's a video series that will be talked about next week, which is also really cool and free. And then after that, there's a webinar that will be, that Kristin and I actually are doing. It's on the 31st of January. It's a free webinar, which goes into important topics. The focus of this webinar, January 31, is why conscious business, why now, and why you. So it really is going to go down into some really important stuff, including the why you. You know, what's in it for you if you've got a traditional job? Why would you want to think about leaving it? What are some of the benefits in going down this path of conscious business? So, and then after that, as has been mentioned, these courses, rather than me, share them more, and you all, Kristin and Stephen, chatted a little bit about them, but why don't we can maybe go a little deeper into that. You mentioned it's a new course. We haven't done this one before. Maybe talk a little bit more about that 6-week course, and then the signature course that comes behind that for people that aren't familiar with that. And Kristin and Stephen, Kristin, do you want to maybe start into that, both the 6-week and the signature course? And this actually is really cool because you mentioned that the certification was a really key thing. So that second, the signature course brings that in.
Yeah, I think I'll start there with the signature course, because I think it's from that we realize that the need for something a little more accessible to everyone. The signature course is the Conscious Business Change Agent Training and Certification Program. And as I've said, we've had several of those programs. We have over 100 people that have graduated from that program previously. And that course is really for those who are looking to completely integrate conscious business into their business practices, whether you're a consultant, whether you're working for a company, you're really ready to embrace conscious business as part of your daily activity in business and the way you do business. And the certification is a individual project that you determine, that comes out of the program, out of the training. The training really covers many, many aspects of conscious business, many tools, all the different examples of how conscious business is being applied in the workplace already. There's a great like-minded community you're interacting with. You're able to ask deeper questions, and you really get a deeper sense for your own understanding of what conscious business means to you. And the certification project is your opportunity to bring that meeting into the next level. So that's the signature program. And obviously that's a longer program. The training itself is about 3 months long, and then we recommend that you complete your project within 6 to 12 months after that, while it's fresh after the training. So the 6-week course is an opportunity to really understand the conscious business, as Stephen said, practices, principles, and even some inner experiential work that you can bring in right now without changing your career. You don't have to dedicate yourself to being all conscious all the time, but it really shows you how to bring that inner conscious business person into your current business, whether you're feeling it's conscious or not. So you're bringing that consciousness, that awareness, like we talked about at the beginning, into what you're doing already. And then from there, obviously, if that spurs you to want to shift and want to join the larger program, that's an obvious next step. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome, thank you, Kristin. Yeah, and Kristin, as she mentioned, just sometimes we call Kristin and Stephen Sherpas for the Conscious Business Change Agent Program because they've gone through it. Stephen, do you want to add anything here on that or the 6-week course that precedes it?
Yeah, Kristin really covered it comprehensively. I would just add, with regard to the certification, that it's just the intention is it's a focused application of what you would have gotten from the first course and what you'll get through the instructional part of the certification course, and applying it to a project, right? So it's really like, okay, what's your proof of concept, and we're helping you to take your proof of conscious business concept practically out into the world through either an entrepreneurial venture, or it could be in your current position. it could be in any number of ways that you're feeling moved to take what you've learned and apply it in a very practical, real world way, because we're all about helping people to take this and put it out in the world, so that conscious business is not just an academic exercise, but it's a tool, and it's a new paradigm, as we say.
Yes, it is. Awesome. So I'll just wrap, and I'll share a little bit about the course that precedes it, and then we're going to go right into our close, because I said that hour would go fast, and here it is. Hour's gone. So the course that's coming up here that starts in the beginning of February, it's called Building a Prosperous Business with Conscious Practices. It's a 6-week course, so we've really distilled a lot down into a fairly small amount of time. And it begins with a module that talks about how the Conscious Business Declaration, which we'll talk about in the close, and probably you all are familiar with, but how it creates a foundation for creating a flourishing business, which creates flourishing communities and a flourishing world. So that's the first module. The second module is an entrepreneurial module that talks about how you start a conscious business like this, how you start it, how you create a culture that is the power plan inside of it, how you create a governance structure supporting the culture, and even sales dimensions of how you start and grow in an entrepreneurial way a conscious business. Then the third module is on leadership. Lance Secretan, who ran Manpower, which is a large global organization, is the instructor for that module. And a key focus in there is inspiration, inspiring leadership, and not just same old leadership. So he really talks about the new definition of what conscious business leadership is. Then there's a program on marketing, because marketing in a conscious company is different than normal marketing. It doesn't get into the fear-based kind of stuff. It's presence-based. So we're bringing in presence, which is more of an attractor than some of the older language and old processes which have been part of marketing up until now. Then there's a program on a community and on outreach, and basically it's talking to how then a conscious business, how it's impacting the community and workers and all of the people that are a part of it, both internal and external to the business. So that's a really cool module. And then the final one is Kristin and Stephen, where they're going to talk about conscious business change agent, which is where we're bringing together the toolkit for people that are transforming companies and that can go all the way through a certification process to become a conscious business change agent, well, a CBCA, where they're actually certified as a conscious business change agent. So there's the 6-week course, and then there's the signature course after it. And I'll just share something that you'll see down as this thing unfolds, that there's a really neat opportunity, which is that people that are interested in going through both programs can do both for the price of the second course. So the first one, which is $497, that's the discounted price, is thrown in for free when people go through the 6-week course and then the Conscious Business Change Agent training. They get the whole thing for the price of just the second course. The first course or intensive is thrown in for free. So let me go into a close here because we're out of time. And I want to first just thank you, Kristin and Stephen. Thank you for being here, being our special guests. What a great hour with wisdom and just great energy of presence.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for having us today. Really appreciate being here.
This was awesome. Yeah, thank you. They had to come in on very short notice because Marilyn is just late yesterday, said, "Oh, I'm in a fire station. I can't do the program." So thank you for coming in. What a great program. I'm going to just kind of speed through some things here because I want to make sure we get to important topics. The Conscious Business Alliance did create this Conscious Business Declaration. If you go to consciousbusinessdeclaration.org, you'll see the short declaration that defines what conscious business is. It creates a systemic path for organizations that want to become conscious. I invite you to go there, consciousbusinessdeclaration.org. We've got it in the window. Read it, and if you resonate with it, if you get an inner yes when you read it, we invite you to sign it and encourage your friends and family and coworkers to sign it also. Then there's also a oneness declaration that we've created. We've got that in the window here as well. When we get to 100,000 signatures, we're going to bring that to the United Nations and invite the United Nations to formally endorse Global Oneness Day, which has been growing year over year. So if you get an enter yes when you read that, I invite you to sign that as well. Upcoming programs you don't want to miss. Next Thursday, we mentioned Lance Secretan. He's the person that teaches the leadership module in the 6-week course. He's also on the Conscious Business Change Agent faculty. He was the CEO of Manpower, and he now runs the Secretan Center. He's currently working on a book called The Bellwether Effect, which is all about bringing love, yes, love, to business. So we're going to talk about that. Be sure to tune in next week and be a part of that program. It starts at 9 o'clock Pacific time. If you go to livinginone.com, you'll see all of the upcoming programs. You can register for free, and if you miss the live program, we'll send a link out so you can watch the program for about 4 days after the live program. This program is focused on living in oneness, so we want to invite you to something called Community Circle. It is only $10 a month. You can see it in the window there. I think we're putting a link here for you as well in the window, also on the Humanities Team website. If you scroll down, you'll see a big rectangle there with Community Circle where you can learn about it a little more. But it's an amazing program for people that are on this journey in oneness. There are over 380 programs that are some in video, some in audio, that you can listen to anytime, anywhere with friends and family. There is a heart circle that is a couple times a month for people to come together and share about their journey in oneness. That's just for those Community Circle members. There's a book club. There's a private Facebook page. There's actually quite a lot that is here. And again, it's only $10 a month. So invite you to go ahead and read about that and see if that might be something of interest. Okay, I want to thank the whole team, everybody that's involved in creating this endeavor. We're going to put up a slide. Here you go. You can see the names of people. These are some of the people: Dee Meyer, Nanette Kennedy, Garth Catterall, Caroline Chang, and our guests here again, Kristin Vesa, Steve Dynako, who are with us today. Thank you. And so let me just close that by inviting us all to live as one. This is ultimate reality. Of course, each of us is going to do this in our own way. When we live this way, we draw on the presence, peace, and power that are our true essence. So we'll see you next Thursday, January 18th, when we're back on the air with Lance Secretan at 9 o'clock Pacific time. And have a fabulous day and rest of the week. Thanks again, Krista and Stephen. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for being here, making it a priority to be with us. Okay, love and thanks, everybody. Talk soon.